All right, let's dive in, shall we? Today it's all about kidneys.
Kidneys.
Yeah, you know those organs we kind of forget about, right?
Until they cause trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
But they are seriously amazing, and I think you'll agree once we get into it. We've got some excerpts from a physiology handout by Dr. Rasha Eldeeb. Seems to be for med students.
Oh, wow.
But don't worry, we'll break it down.
Make it nice and digestible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, we all know kidneys filter waste.
Of course, that's their job.
But get this. This handout says they're actually essential for making red blood cells.
That's right.
What?
Yeah.
And they also regulate blood pressure and activate vitamin D.
It's true. Kidneys are the ultimate multitaskers.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So it's all about maintaining this perfect internal balance, right?
Exactly, what we call homeostasis. It's like this constant fine-tuning act to keep the body's internal environment stable.
So it's like a high-tech thermostat or something, always making these little adjustments.
Perfect analogy. And one of the key ways it does this is through urine formation. The handout breaks it down into 4 steps: filtration, reabsorption, secretion, and excretion.
Okay, 4 steps.
Yeah, and get this, your kidneys filter about 180 liters of fluid every day.
Wait, 180 liters? That's crazy.
It is, but here's the kicker. Only about 1.5 liters actually leave your body as urine. The rest gets reabsorbed.
So are the kidneys like recycling experts or something?
You could say that. They're incredibly efficient at reclaiming those valuable substances before they go to waste.
That's amazing. And hold on, there's more. The handout also mentions that the kidneys produce hormones like renin and erythropoietin.
Oh yeah, the kidneys aren't just filtering, they're communicating too.
So what do those hormones actually do?
Well, renin is essential for regulating blood pressure, and erythropoietin tells your bone marrow to make more red blood cells, those oxygen-carrying cells.
Wow, so it's a filter, a recycling plant, and a hormone factory. Is there anything these kidneys can't do?
It seems not. They also inactivate harmful substances and create new ones, like ammonia, to maintain that acid-base balance in your body.
Okay, that is officially mind-blowing. But to really understand how they do all this, we need to zoom in on the nephron.
The nephron.
Yeah, the functional unit of the kidney.
Ah, right. The tiny workhorses.
Tiny. How tiny are we talking here?
Each kidney houses about 1.2 million nephrons. Imagine millions of microscopic filtration units all working together.
1.2 million. Okay, that's a lot of tiny filters.
Yeah.
So what's happening inside these nephrons? The handout mentions something called the glomerulus in Bowman's capsule.
Ah, yes. Think of the glomerulus as a tiny ball of capillaries, those teeny blood vessels. It's nestled inside Bowman's capsule, which is like a cup, catching the fluid that gets filtered out of the blood.
So like a microscopic sieve.
Exactly. But it's a very special sieve.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The glomerular wall has these specialized cells called podocytes, and they have these finger-like projections, almost like interlocked fingers.
Interlocked fingers.
Yeah. These projections form tiny slits, filtration slits, that are incredibly precise.
Huh, fascinating. So what gets through these slits?
Well, small molecules like water, glucose, and waste products can pass through, but larger molecules like proteins and blood cells are blocked.
So it's like this super selective bouncer for your bloodstream. What happens to all of that filtered fluid then? The handout mentions something called the proximal convoluted tubule, or PCT.
Ah, yes, the PCT. That's where the reabsorption magic happens.
Reabsorption magic. Tell me more.
Think of it as the reabsorption center. It's lined with cells that have these tiny little projections called microvilli, and these increase the surface area for reabsorption.
So it's like a sponge soaking up all the good stuff.
Yeah, a really efficient sponge, and it needs a lot of energy to do its job. So PCT cells are packed with mitochondria, those tiny powerhouses that provide energy for active transport.
Okay, so it's actively pulling those essential nutrients like glucose and amino acids back into the bloodstream. No waste allowed.
Exactly. It's like a salvage operation, making sure nothing valuable gets lost.
That makes a lot of sense. What about those other processes, though, like secretion and excretion? Where do they happen?
Well, secretion is moving additional substances from the blood into the tubule, things that need to be removed. Excretion is simply getting rid of that processed filtrate, what we now call urine.
So secretion is like adding, and excretion is like taking away.
You got it. But before we follow that path, there's another fascinating structure we need to explore, the juxtaglomerular apparatus, or JGA.
The JGA. Sounds important.
It is. It's like a mini command center involved in regulating blood pressure and filtration rate. It's all about feedback.
Okay, so how does this JGA regulate things?
Well, it uses something called tubular glomerular feedback. The JGA has these specialized cells that monitor the salt levels in the fluid flowing through the nephron.
So it's like a taste test for the kidneys.
That's one way to think about it. If the salt level is too high, it signals that the filtration rate is too high.
And then what happens?
It tells the blood vessels supplying the glomerulus to constrict, reducing blood flow and slowing down filtration.
Wow, so it's self-regulating.
Exactly. And the opposite happens if the salt level is too low. It signals the release of renin, which we talked about earlier. This leads to increased blood pressure and a higher filtration rate.
So it's a constant back and forth, keeping everything balanced.
Precisely. It's a remarkable system working tirelessly to maintain that delicate balance. And there's another fascinating aspect, the blood supply to the kidneys. Did you know there are actually two capillary beds involved?
Two. Wait, why two?
Well, you have the glomerular capillaries, where filtration happens under high pressure. Then you have the peritubular capillaries, where reabsorption takes place under lower pressure.
Okay, two different pressure systems.
It's like a carefully designed plumbing system, making sure the right amount of fluid moves in the right direction.
That's incredible. It's like the kidney has its own internal circulatory system.
Exactly. It's all about creating the right pressure gradients to drive those essential processes.
Okay, now my mind is officially blown. But wait, there's more, right? The handout mentions something called the vasa recta.
Ah, yes, the vasa recta, those specialized capillaries in the medulla.
They're involved in concentrating urine, right? But we'll have to save that story for another time.
Another deep dive, perhaps?
Definitely. But for now, I think we've done enough damage to our brains.
We've only just scratched the surface of the kidney's complexity.
Absolutely. And I, for one, can't wait to learn more. But let's take a moment to process all this amazing information before we continue our deep dive.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so back to those two capillary beds. The high-pressure glomerular capillaries and the low-pressure peritubular capillaries.
Right.
It's like a two-step process, filtration and then reabsorption, all driven by these pressure differences.
Yeah, it's a brilliant system, really. The pressure gradient created by the narrower efferent arteriole is key for both filtration and reabsorption.
So it's not just having two sets of capillaries, but like the pressure relationship between them that makes it all work.
Exactly. And this pressure-driven system, it's so efficient, making sure we hold on to the important stuff while getting rid of the waste.
Amazing. And, okay, what about those vasa recta? Those specialized capillaries in the medulla.
Ah, yes, the vasa recta. They're crucial for maintaining the osmotic gradient in the medulla.
The what gradient?
The osmotic gradient. Think of it like creating a salty environment deep within the kidney.
A salty environment. Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, this gradient is really important for drawing water out of the collecting duct later on so we can concentrate the urine and conserve water.
So it's like setting a trap for water, using salt to pull it out.
That's a great way to put it. A clever mechanism for making sure we don't lose too much water, especially when water is scarce.
That's fascinating. But how does the kidney, know how concentrated to make the urine? What tells it to hold on to more water or let more go?
Hormones. Specifically, a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH.
ADH, okay.
It acts on the collecting ducts, those final tubes in the nephron. It regulates how much water they reabsorb.
So if you're dehydrated, your body releases more ADH, and the collecting ducts reabsorb more water, making your key super concentrated.
You got it. And when you're well hydrated, ADH levels drop and the collecting ducts become less permeable to water, so you produce more dilute urine.
It's incredible how our bodies just figure all this out without us even thinking about it.
Right. It's all about maintaining that fluid balance.
Earlier, we touched on the nephron, that tiny functional unit of the kidney.
Yeah.
But I think it deserves a closer look, We know it's responsible for filtration, reabsorption, and secretion, but can we break down how those processes actually happen within the nephron?
Sure, let's break it down. Remember, the nephron is this tiny tubular structure.
Right.
It starts with the renal corpuscle, which houses the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule. That's where filtration kicks off.
Right, the glomerulus, that ball of capillaries where blood gets filtered, and Bowman's capsule catches the filtrate. And those podocytes with their interlocked fingers creating those filtration slits, right?
Yeah, exactly. Those slits are the first gatekeepers, only letting the right molecules through.
So the initial filtrate is basically blood plasma minus the big stuff.
Precisely. And from there, the filtrate begins its journey through the tubular system of the nephron. First, stop the proximal convoluted tubule, or PCT.
The PCT, that's the reabsorption superstar, packed with mitochondria to power those active transport pumps.
You got it. It's constantly pulling in essential nutrients like glucose, amino acids, and electrolytes, sending them back into the bloodstream.
So it's like a recycling center, making sure nothing valuable gets wasted.
Great analogy. But the PCT isn't just about reclaiming stuff. It also plays a role in secretion, actively transporting certain substances like hydrogen ions and drugs from the blood into the filtrate.
Oh, so it's a two-way street. Substances moving both in and out of the tubule.
Exactly. And from the PCT, the filtrate flows into the loop of Henle, that hairpin-shaped structure that dips down into the medulla.
Ah, yes, the loop of Henle, responsible for concentrating urine. But how does it actually do that?
It's all about creating that osmotic gradient we were talking about earlier.
Right, the salty environment.
Exactly. The descending limb is permeable to water, so as the filtrate travels down, water gets pulled out by that increasing saltiness.
So the deeper it goes, the more water it loses.
Exactly. Clever. Right. And then, as the filtrate travels back up the ascending limb, it becomes impermeable to water, but it actively pumps out salts, making the medulla even saltier.
Okay, so the descending limb loses water, the ascending limb pumps out salt, and this back and forth creates that salty environment that's key for concentrating urine later on.
That's it. And from the loop of Henle, the filtrate enters the distal convoluted tubule, or DCT.
DCT, right? That's where the fine-tuning happens.
Exactly. The DCT reabsorbs more sodium and calcium, secretes potassium and hydrogen ions, and plays a role in regulating acid-base balance. It's also where aldosterone, a hormone that regulates sodium reabsorption, exerts its effects.
So it's like the final quality control check before the urine leaves the nephron.
Precisely. And from the DCT, the filtrate finally reaches the collecting duct, the last stop on its journey.
The collecting duct, where ADH comes in and regulates water reabsorption.
That's right. The collecting duct is like a gatekeeper, controlling how much water gets reabsorbed back into the bloodstream based on the body's needs.
Wow, each segment of the nephron has such a specific role, yet they all work together to produce urine and keep us balanced. It's like a perfectly choreographed dance.
A testament to the elegance of biological design.
Oh.
And speaking of design, remember that juxtaglomerular apparatus, the JGA?
Oh yeah, the JGA with those macula densa cells acting like taste testers?
Exactly. They're key players in the tubulo-glomerular feedback mechanism, signaling those renin-producing cells to either constrict or release renin based on the salt concentration.
So if the filtrate is too salty, the JGA tells the afferent arteriole to constrict, reducing blood flow.
You got it. And if it's too dilute, it triggers renin release to increase blood pressure and filtration rate.
It's incredible, this constant monitoring and adjustment, like a mini thermostat for the kidneys.
It is remarkable how our bodies just do this automatically.
Okay, so we've covered filtration, reabsorption, secretion. Is there anything we've missed?
Well, we haven't talked much about what happens to the urine once it leaves the kidneys. I mean, it's got to go somewhere, right?
Ah, yeah, good point. So from the collecting ducts, where does it go?
It enters the renal pelvis, kind of like a funnel that collects the urine from all the nephrons.
Okay, so all the urine from each kidney ends up in the renal pelvis.
Exactly. And from there, it flows down these long tubes called ureters.
Ureters, those connect the kidneys to the bladder, right?
You got it. It's like a one-way street to the bladder where the urine is stored until,
Well, nature calls. I have to say, I'm feeling a newfound appreciation for my kidneys and for my bladder for that matter after this deep dive.
Me too. It's amazing how much is going on down there that we never even think about.
It's incredible. So much complexity, so much coordination, all happening silently and efficiently.
A true testament to the power of biological design.
Well said. Before we wrap up, I just want to say a huge thanks to Dr. Eldeeb for her amazing physiology handout.
Yeah, it's been a great resource.
It really helped us, uncover all these fascinating details about the kidney.
And hopefully it's inspired our listeners to, keep exploring and learning more about their amazing bodies.
Absolutely. Curiosity is key. And remember, there's always more to discover about the wonders of our bodies, even in those places we tend to take for granted.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, folks. Until next time, keep those kidneys happy and healthy.
Cheers to that. Yeah, so much going on we never even think about.
It really is incredible. So much complexity, so much coordination, all happening, behind the scenes.
A true testament to the power of biology, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Okay, before we wrap up, any final thoughts?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is to really appreciate the kidney, It's not just this simple filter, but a master regulator, a hormone producer, and essential for maintaining the body's balance.
It's a reminder to never take our kidneys for granted.
Exactly. And remember, we've only scratched the surface here. Dr. Eldeeb's handout was a great start, but I encourage everyone to keep learning, keep exploring.
Curiosity is key. There's always more to discover about the wonders of our bodies, right? Even those parts we tend to, well, forget about.
Well said.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the amazing world of the kidney. Until next time, keep those kidneys happy and healthy.
Cheers to that.